The Dutton were never really ended. It just changed uniforms. When Casey Dutton put the Yellowstone Ranch behind him, everyone thought the bloodshed was over. But the trailer for Yellowstone Marshals proves one thing very clearly: you don't walk away from who you are. You only take it with you. And this time, the fight isn't over land. It's over survival, justice, and the ghosts that refuse to stay buried. From the very first moments of the Yellowstone Marshals trailer, it becomes clear that this is not a victory lap for Casey Dutton. This is not a story about a man finally finding peace. Instead, it feels like a continuation of a long internal war, one that Yellowstone started and never finished. Casey isn't riding back to the ranch. He's stepping into a darker role, wearing a badge that carries just as much danger as the Dutton name ever did. Casey Dutton was always different from the rest of his family. John ruled through power. Beth ruled through fear. Rip ruled through loyalty and violence. But Casey was torn between all of it. Soldier, father, son, killer, protector. Yellowstone showed us a man who hated violence but was terrifyingly good at it. Marshals doesn't erase that conflict, it sharpens it. Now working with an elite unit of U.S. Marshals in Montana, Casey is supposedly starting a new chapter. But the trailer makes it painfully obvious that this new beginning is mostly a lie he tells himself. His face doesn't show relief. It shows exhaustion. When he talks about changing paths, it doesn't sound like hope, it sounds like survival. Like someone trying to convince himself that this next road will hurt less than the last one. The setting may be different, but the weight on Casey's shoulders feels even heavier. As a marshal, he is no longer defending one ranch or one family. He is stepping into a world where every case is a moral test, and every decision can destroy someone's life. This is not cowboy justice anymore. This is law, order, and consequence, and Casey has never been comfortable with rules that don't bend. What makes this story so compelling is that Casey isn't chasing power or purpose. He's running from himself. The trailer shows him moving fast, reacting on instinct, relying on the same skills that once made him deadly on the battlefield and dangerous on the ranch. Horse chases, armed confrontations, silent stares. All of it points to one truth. The violence followed him. It always does. There's also a sense that Casey doesn't fully believe he deserves peace. Yellowstone ended with the promise of calm, of family, of choosing Monica and Tate over bloodshed. But Marshals opens with absence. Silence. Distance. And that absence hangs over every frame. It raises uncomfortable questions before the show even begins. What did Casey lose to be here? And what did this job cost him before the first badge was even pinned on his chest? Unlike Yellowstone, where the land was the battlefield, Marshals turns Montana itself into a threat. The trailer hints at gangs, cartels, and unseen enemies hiding behind wide-open skies. This isn't a place ruled by tradition anymore. It's ruled by chaos. And Casey Dutton, whether he likes it or not, has been shaped his entire life to face chaos head-on. What makes Yellowstone Marshals feel powerful is that it doesn't pretend Casey is becoming a hero. It presents him as a man still wrestling with the same instincts that once made him dangerous. The difference now is that he's wearing the law on his chest, and every violent decision carries a different kind of price. This isn't the story of a man escaping his past. It's the story of a man discovering that his past is the only thing that prepared him for what's coming next. And if Yellowstone taught us anything, it's this. When a Dutton tries to outrun destiny, destiny always catches up. One of the loudest things in the Yellowstone Marshals trailer is what it doesn't show. The ranch is gone. The family circle is broken. And the silence left behind feels intentional. Yellowstone was never just a place, it was a weight, a responsibility passed down through blood, violence, and sacrifice. When Casey walked away from it, he didn't escape the burden. He absorbed it. In Marshals, the Yellowstone legacy doesn't disappear. It lingers under the surface, shaping every decision Casey makes. The trailer quietly reminds us that no matter how far he goes, the Dutton name still defines him. He may no longer defend fences and grazing land, but he's still fighting the same war, the one between justice and survival. What's striking is how lonely Casey's journey feels this time. Yellowstone surrounded him with family, even when they were tearing each other apart. Here he stands apart. His new role places him inside a system, not a family. The U.S. Marshals aren't bound by blood or loyalty. They're bound by duty. And for a man like Casey, duty has always been both a shield and a curse. The absence of Monica is impossible to ignore. Yellowstone ended with the promise that Casey had finally chosen peace. Chosen his wife, his son, and a life away from constant violence. But Marshals opens with a version of Casey that feels hollowed out. That raises unsettling possibilities. Maybe peace didn't last. Maybe it was never real. Or maybe choosing peace came at a cost too painful to carry on screen. This emotional gap adds a tragic edge to the story. Casey doesn't feel like a man building something new. He feels like someone who lost something irreplaceable and threw himself into danger to avoid grieving it. The trailer never explains where Monica is, but her absence shapes everything. It turns Casey's badge into a form of punishment, a way to keep moving so he doesn't have to stop and feel. The return of familiar faces like Tate, Thomas Rainwater, and Mo reminds us that the land still remembers Casey, even if he's tried to move on. These connections suggest unfinished business. The fight over Montana was never just about property. It was about identity, belonging, and who gets to decide what justice looks like. Marshals doesn't abandon those themes, it reframes them. Now the battlefield is broader. The enemies aren't ranchers and developers. They're organized crime, hidden networks, and violence that doesn't announce itself. The trailer hints that Montana's beauty hides something rotten underneath. Wide open skies, quiet roads, and danger that strikes without warning. This is a different kind of frontier, and it demands a different kind of strength. Casey's military background becomes more important than ever. As a former Navy SEAL, he understands precision, restraint, and consequences. But Yellowstone showed us that even with discipline, his instincts can overwhelm him. Marshals seems ready to test whether a man built for war can truly serve justice without losing himself. There's also a deeper question running beneath everything. Can the law replace family? Yellowstone suggested that loyalty to blood often required moral compromise. Marshals flips that idea. Here, loyalty to the law may demand emotional sacrifice instead. Every arrest, every chase, every split-second decision pulls Casey further away from the life he once tried to protect. What makes this chapter so compelling is that it refuses to offer comfort. There is no promise that Casey's choices will lead to redemption. There is no guarantee that justice will feel clean. Instead, the show leans into uncertainty, into moral gray areas. What makes Yellowstone Marshals feel darker than its predecessor is the kind of enemies Casey Dutton now faces. Yellowstone was brutal, but its conflicts were personal. Family against family, ranch against outsiders. Every act of violence carried history behind it. In Marshals, that history is gone, and that makes the danger far more unpredictable. The trailer paints Montana as a place where the law barely reaches and evil hides in plain sight. This is no longer a fight for land or legacy. It's a war against networks that thrive in silence. Gangs, traffickers, and shadow operations that don't care about tradition or reputation. They care about control. And they don't announce themselves until it's too late. One line from the trailer captures this shift perfectly. Montana may look like God's country, but the devil is running free. That idea sits at the heart of the show. Beauty becomes a mask. Quiet towns become hunting grounds. And Casey's job is to step into danger that most people don't even know exists. As a U.S. Marshal, Casey isn't just reacting anymore, he's hunting. Each case brings him face to face with the worst corners of human nature. These aren't emotional enemies driven by grudges. They're organized, ruthless, and efficient. And that forces Casey to rely less on emotion and more on instinct. The same instincts that once terrified him. The structure of the show reflects this new reality. Unlike Yellowstone's long, slow-burning family drama, Marshals moves case by case. Each episode introduces a new threat, a new moral dilemma, and a new cost. But beneath those individual stories, a larger truth builds. Violence never disappears. It only changes shape. This format puts Casey under constant pressure. There's no time to process trauma. No time to grieve what he's lost. One mission ends and another begins. And with every success, something inside him erodes a little more. The badge demands efficiency, not reflection. Justice, not healing. His fellow Marshals bring different perspectives into this world. They aren't Duttons. They don't carry generational guilt. For them, this is a job. For Casey, it's personal whether he admits it or not. That difference creates tension. He understands violence too well, and that makes him both an asset and a liability. What's unsettling is how natural this role seems to him. The trailer shows a man who moves with purpose when chaos erupts, who doesn't hesitate when others freeze. And that raises a frightening question. Was Casey always meant for this life? Was Yellowstone simply preparing him for a future where violence is official, sanctioned, and unavoidable? Montana itself becomes a character in this war. Vast landscapes offer freedom, but also isolation. Help is far away. Backup is never guaranteed. When things go wrong, they go wrong fast. And the law often arrives too late to fix what's already broken. The show leans into the psychological toll of being the last line of defense. Casey isn't saving the world. He's preventing it from collapsing a little more each day. And that kind of responsibility wears a man down, especially one who already doubts his own worth. What Yellowstone Marshals does so well, even in its first look, is remove the illusion of heroism. There are no clean wins here. Every arrest creates new enemies. Every choice leaves scars. And every act of justice comes with consequences that follow Casey home, even when he tries to shut the door. This isn't a redemption story. It's a survival story. And as the cases grow darker and the threats grow closer, one thing becomes clear. The war Casey Dutton is fighting now doesn't end when the sun goes down. It lives inside him. By the time the Yellowstone Marshals trailer reaches its final moments, one truth settles in with uncomfortable clarity. This story was never about escape. It was about inheritance. Casey Dutton didn't leave Yellowstone behind. He carried it with him, reshaped into something colder, heavier, and far more dangerous. Legacy has always been a curse in the Yellowstone universe. John Dutton passed down land soaked in blood. Beth inherited rage and strategy. Rip inherited loyalty without mercy. And Casey inherited conflict. He was never allowed to be just one thing. Son, soldier, father, protector. Every role demanded violence, and every act of violence demanded a piece of his soul in return. Marshals takes that inheritance and strips away the comfort of family. There is no ranch to defend, no father giving orders, no siblings pulling him back into old wars. What's left is a man alone with his choices, and a badge that forces him to confront consequences instead of burying them. The trailer suggests that destiny is tightening its grip. Casey's skills, his instincts, and his moral struggles all point toward this role feeling inevitable. As if everything in Yellowstone was preparing him for a future where violence is controlled, measured, and legally justified, but no less devastating. And that may be the most tragic part. In this world, Casey can no longer hide behind family loyalty or survival instincts. Every trigger pulled, every door kicked in, every life altered by his actions comes with official accountability. The law doesn't erase guilt. It amplifies it. The emotional weight of this journey is impossible to ignore. The silence around Monica hangs over the story like a wound that hasn't healed. Whether her absence is explained through loss, separation, or something darker, it shapes Casey into a man who feels unfinished. A man who may believe that suffering is the only thing he deserves. The presence of Tate, Rainwater, and Emo reminds us that the past hasn't released its grip either. The land remembers. The people remember. And even if Casey never sets foot on the Yellowstone Ranch again, its history still judges him. Justice in Montana has never been simple, and Marshals doesn't pretend otherwise. What sets this series apart is its refusal to promise hope. There is no guarantee that Casey will find peace at the end of this road. There is no assurance that doing the right thing will heal what's broken inside him. Instead, the show asks a harder question. What if justice and happiness cannot exist together? As the threats grow more complex and the stakes more personal, Casey faces a future where every victory costs him something he can't replace. Sleep, trust, connection. The badge doesn't protect him from that. It accelerates it. Yellowstone Marshals isn't trying to replace Yellowstone. It's evolving it, shifting the focus from land wars to moral ones, from family feuds to internal battles. And in doing so, it places Casey Dutton exactly where he has always been, at the center of violence, trying desperately to control it instead of letting it define him. This is the story of a man walking a line so thin that one mistake could destroy everything he has left. A man shaped by blood, duty, and loss. A man who may finally discover that the greatest enemy he faces isn't out there in Montana. It's the legacy he can never outrun.